Hello there and welcome to Low Fidelity, a music review show for anyone who wants to watch. My name is Connor Klang, I'll be your host, and let's get right into this one. That was a little too peppy. Gotta tone down on the pep a little bit. Okay. The year was 2001 when Jay-Z released his sixth album, The Blueprint, widely considered to be one of his best albums of all time. And that wasn't just because of Jay-Z's incredible lyricism, which was as good then as it was at any point in his career, but also the incredibly soulful and catchy production. The beats on that album contained a lot of high-pitched soul samples that a lot of people really appreciated, and a lot of them were contributed by a then pretty much unknown producer named Kanye West. Kanye soon made quite a name for himself as a producer, and many other artists wanted him to make beats for them, but that wasn't what he wanted to do with his career. What he wanted to do was be a rapper. This doesn't sound like a big deal right now, but at the time, the fact that he was a middle-class art school dropout who had interests in high fashion and painting meant that a lot of labels just didn't want to sign Kanye because he was so outside the typical rap image. Eventually, he signed with Jay-Z, but reluctantly. Jay-Z just didn't want him making beats for anyone else. And Jay-Z got even more reluctant when Kanye finished his first album, The College Dropout, an album that featured songs about such unorthodox topics as recovering from car accidents and how much Kanye loves Yeezus. And not only that, but those two songs were like the most likely singles from the album. Jay-Z and the people he ran a label with were pretty sure that Kanye would become well-known around people who liked alternative hip-hop, but wouldn't make any dent in the mainstream and would just generally be a beatmaker for the rest of his life, because how could someone who rapped about such strange topics and end up being successful at all? And then that didn't happen, and Kanye got huge. Jay-Z had never been the most experimental of rappers, but he made up for it by being incredibly good. Every new Jay-Z album wasn't entirely different from his last one, but it featured him at the top of his game, rapping incredibly well with great wordplay, and everyone appreciated it for that. Kanye was a different story. He was never technically a great rapper, but every new album of his sounded so different that people got interested in them for that. Kanye was always on the forefront of what the next new innovation in hip-hop would be. Constantly innovating is a good way to make great albums, but it isn't always the best way to get people to buy those albums. For instance, Kanye's latest album, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, was an instant classic and was rated by many critics as being their best album of the year. But it also was the worst-selling album of Kanye's career to that point. Jay-Z's most recent album, The Blueprint 3, on the other hand, was rightly viewed by most critics to be one of his worst albums yet, but also sold incredibly well because of how many just great singles were on it. And of course, innovation can lead to bad albums as often as it can lead to good albums. For every My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy someone who innovates all the time makes, there's an equal chance of making an 808s and Heartbreak, which featured Kanye singing over incredible amounts of autotune and just generally no. But whichever of these two artists' personal philosophies you agree with, it's pretty clear that they have different philosophies when it comes to music, and it was nice to see those philosophies sort of clash with each other on the collaborative album they did together. That was also the last album either of them worked on, Watch the Throne. On that album, it was nice to hear two men with entirely different creative visions work together to make something on the same page, which makes it even more interesting how their latest albums have turned out. Both Kanye and Jay-Z have new albums out this summer. Kanye's new album is called Yeezus, and Jay-Z's new album is called Magna Carta, Holy Grail. And they could not be more different. Even before either album came out, you could tell that they would be incredibly different. For instance, Kanye promoted Yeezus before its release by having projections in cities across the world in which he played a video of his song New Slaves, in which he rants about corporations being evil, while Jay-Z promoted Magna Carta, Holy Grail before it came out by making a deal with a corporation in which people could listen to the album a week early if they got a fancy Samsung phone. And Kanye made his album have no album artwork aside from a single red sticker so that nothing could detract from the music itself, while Jay-Z unveiled his album art next to the actual Magna Carta because he has money. None of that matters if the music is good, though, and Yeezus is very good. It's going to be very polarizing for a lot of people, but personally, I really enjoyed it. The beats on this album are very abrasive and noisy and minimalistic, and it's probably going to turn a lot of people off, but to me it just sounds really, really cool. Black Skinhead is probably the coolest sounding song of them all, with heavy drums and distorted synthesizers and Kanye's voice literally screaming at some point. It just oozes emotion and anger. And Blood on the Leaves starts by sampling an old piano-driven folk song, and it sounds really pretty, and then all of a sudden the beat drops and there are these demonic-sounding horns and heavy drums, and it's an amazing moment. But the nicest thing about the beats on Yeezus is how cohesive they make the album feel. It definitely feels like an album meant to be listened front to back, and every song sort of fits in with the ones around it to make a really nice album-y feel. which is something you really appreciate when you listen to something like Magna Carta Holy Grail, because the beats on that album are so different and varied that it just sort of feels like a bunch of songs that Jay-Z made and then realized, oh, I have enough songs for an album, let's just release an album now. Which isn't to say that albums can't tackle more than one mood or style, but just that Magna Carta Holy Grail switches between moods and styles way too often, and often that switch feels really jarring. Most of the songs on Magna Carta Holy Grail sound great though. The funky bass line of Picasso Baby and the really, really old school sounding horns of Somewhere in America are particular highlights. As far as features go, Yeezus is mostly a just Kanye affair. His voice is the only voice on most of the album's songs, although there are features from Bon Iver and trap artists Chief Keef and Big L. Although whoever's idea it was to have Chief Keef sing the hook to the song Hold My Liquor through incredible amounts of autotune needs to not have their job anymore.
I can't handle no liquor, but these bitches can't handle me.
And the few guests that Kanye gets for his album aren't that much, considering that Jay-Z has Nas, Pharrell, Beyonce, Justin Timberlake, Swizz Beatz, and Timbaland on one song. That song, BBC, is one of the best songs on the album, and I wouldn't mind if it hits the radio a lot, because that thing is seriously funky, and I love it. But the problem with a lot of Jay-Z's features is that they end up entirely taking over the songs that they're in. For instance, Part 2, On the Run, sounds like a pretty good Beyonce song, with some Jay-Z guest verses. And the album opener, Holy Grail, sounds like a pretty nice Justin Timberlake song that Jay-Z just uncomfortably ums over a lot of, and then gives some bad verses. Also, there's a part of Holy Grail in which Jay-Z and Justin Timberlake briefly cover Smells Like Teen Spirit, and it's pretty much the worst thing ever. Lyrically, Kanye does have some moments on Yeezus. For instance, New Slaves is among the best lyrics he's ever done, and that song in general is just pretty incredible. But there are also some really terrible Kanye lyric moments on Yeezus. For instance, the song I'm In It has just a lot of really unspeakable things that I'm not going to mention here, but they're just... And the song I Am a God featuring God has one line in particular that a lot of people have been making fun of. You see, for most of the song, he's rapping about how much privilege he has, saying things like hurry up with my damn massage and get the Porsche out the damn garage, which is totally fine and good. And then he drops this line.
In a French-ass restaurant, hurry up with my damn croissants.
I don't know what I like most about the hurry up with my damn croissants line. Is it the fact that he's legitimately bragging about eating croissants at French restaurants? Or is it the fact that, like, the beat entirely drops before it so that there's nothing to distract you from the incredible beauty that is hurry up with my damn croissants? But all of the lyrical missteps Kanye makes on this album are okay because of Bound 2, in which he really honestly talks about his relationship and how he hasn't had the best of luck with relationships in the past, but how he hopes this one will last, and it's an amazing song, and I appreciate it so much. And that's boosted by the song's production, which goes back to Kanye's roots and has a sped-up soul sample at its forefront, and it's just, oh my god, it's so good. Magna Carta Holy Grail is more consistent lyrically, and Jay-Z's lyrics are more consistently good, but he has a problem where he sounds like he's not particularly into anything that he's saying. So he'll have very nice lyrics, but he'll just sort of toss them off as if it's not even really anything. You know, he doesn't have any passion. That passion is really sorely missing from this album and would have made it a lot better. And on a lot of the songs, he doesn't have that much to rap about except for how nice it is to be Jay-Z, and that can get kind of grating after a while. On the one hand, the album has a song like Jay-Z Blue, in which Jay-Z talks about how he wishes he could be a better father to his daughter than his father was for him, but he's also worried because he and his father are alike in a lot of ways, and it's just really heartbreaking and confessional and great. But that exists on the same album as Somewhere in America, in which he just forgets to rap because he's going on an extended reference about how Miley Cyrus is twerking. So which album is really better? I'm gonna say Yeezus. You might disagree, and that's entirely okay, but that's the album that I feel really spoke to me much more. Will it speak to you? Maybe, maybe not. You might end up absolutely hating it, but it tries, and I really appreciate it for that, and I think it tries and succeeds. So, yeah, that's my opinion on those two albums. Take care.